The role of object relations in moral masochism. Bernhard, The Psychoanalytic Quarterly 27, 1958, 38-56. Masochism is not simply self-torment and self-punishment. A prerequisite is relation to another person, a reality from the beginning and instrumental in bringing about the entire masochistic process. Adhering to the dual instinct theory, both libidinal drive and environmental relations are important, but in masochism, aggressive environmental forces are the decisive ones. Masochistic suffering is kept alive through transference and represents the original love object that once gave suffering. Masochism is the sadism of the love object fused with the libido of the subject. It is the neurotic solution to the conflict between the need to be loved and the experience of non-love. It is a defensive structure of denial and libidinization, the goal of which is not to not suffer, but to avoid suffering. Like any neurotic defense, it is not only unsuccessful, but even helps the return of the repressed. Suffering becomes the price to be paid for obtaining a bit of love, or even just the imagining of it. The experience of hate and ill treatment are repressed via denial and libidinization of suffering. Hate is accepted as if it were love. There is no conscious distinction. Suffering is introjected. The pain-giving love object and the suffering it causes become parts of the superego which protect from too much suffering but do not heal the narcissistic wound. The superego forces the subject to relive and reenact the original trauma. Repression occurs simply due to fear of loss of the love object. This too is unsuccessful, as hostility manifests all the more in character traits. Most difficult is understanding aggressive behaviors of the masochist. 1. There is a remnant of justified hatred. 2. Aggression is expressed in attempt to save love through suffering, i.e. intense bids for affection. Extortion of love is attempted as the masochist inflicts himself upon the love object. It's a provocative attitude, giving the impression he asks for punishment. The masochist feels a claim to love, to being loved, and takes as privilege the exercise of aggression. A grievance collector, having cause against the object is more important than having the object. Exhibitionism serves to continue denial of rejection. 3. The masochist arranges for trouble by projecting hostility and exonerating the non-loving love object. The goal is to punish the love object with failure and unhappiness, which emphasize love-worthiness and the bid for affection. The aggressive attitude of the masochist looks like sadism, but it is a secondary defense against the passive primary defense of denial and libidinization, which led to painful neurotic, even psychotic depression. This counter-masochistic attitude also fails because it embodies the elements of the conflict it is directed at. Identification with the love object is the most powerful mechanism in the masochist against guilt and suffering. Love and approval are sought by copying aggressive trends of the love object. These are directed against the ego and the external world. The masochist loses his or her identity in the introjection, will deny his or her own good qualities, will fail to exploit opportunities, confuses irrational asceticism with virtue, and lives down to the views of those who resent him or her in order to be accepted by them. He or she releases the hater from having to love him or her. The masochist's stigma of unwantedness is the bid for affection. This is borrowed authority to punish. It is not the primary sadism of the subject, but an imitation of the love object as a search for love, acting as he or she is, quote, supposed to be. The masochist at this point is completely unaware of behaving provocatively. Superego shields ego and furnishes motives for aggression. Drive to punish is accepted in form and content. Subject punishes self and others, developing his or her own drive to punish and passing it on to other generations. The introject and subject's own sadism operate in various proportions. In the masochist, the subject's primary sadism is only the instinctual potentiality for identification with the aggressor, and libidinization prevails as the motivating force. Where the subject's sadism is more present and is merely steered by the sadism of the object, this is less masochism and more obsessional neurosis. The diagnosis of masochism should not be made if the introjection of another person's sadism is not the essential pattern. The masochist patient is a double, both victim of trauma and troublemaker, entangling self in conflicts he craves and in which he re-victimizes himself. The transference must be slowed in therapy to examine with the patient the formation of transferences and how he or she invites others to treat him or her with the same rejection experienced in the original love object. As pre-Oedipal conflicts, what is being acted out is neither libidinal need nor defense against it, but both simultaneously. As longing for love is fulfilled, Counterforces from deep unconscious may be stimulated and intensified. Persons with self-destructive tendencies must be watched for acting out of pre-Oedipal libidinal need that has deep association with frustration. Sense of guilt is broken down into need for affection and experience of the punishing patient. These are recognized as more defeat than guilt. Self-healing occurs as the superego relaxes and there is differentiation between hate and love.